Alright, so at this point, you're ready to start assembling your project. The first thing you need to do when you're an inventor is make sure that you are in your pegboard toy project. If you're not in the right project, then you're not going to find your parts and you're not going to be able to assemble anything. So I'm in the right project. Now I want to go ahead and click on New. Instead of clicking on Standard IPT, I want to click on Standard IAM. IAM stands for Inventor Assembly. And you can see that all these blocks have been put together to represent that you're assembling the project. So this is just a cube, so each individual part, and then putting the cubes together to make the assembly. I'm going to hit create, and it's going to load up the workspace where you're going to go ahead and start assembling your parts. Alright, when you get to this point, the only button you really need to worry about right now is this place. And you're going to go in and place, I'm going to start with the actual pegboard, this right here, and open it up. So it's already been drawn, I'm just placing it in space. So I'm just clicking and it places it in space. A really nice thing about Inventor is if I were making something like a vehicle with wheels and I needed 4 wheels, I don't have to draw 4 wheels, I just have to place the wheels 4 times. But I don't need 4 of these, I just need 1, so I'm going to delete these out. And I just have my single pegboard. Right now this moves around in space, and I would prefer that it just stays in one spot. So I'm going to click on it, so I'm selecting it, so I'm left clicking, and then I'm going to right click on the object and go ahead and click grounded. And so what that does is it doesn't let me move this part around anymore. It stays static, it doesn't move. Okay. So I have this part. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and load up my ends. And so I do need 2 ends, one for the left side and one for the right side. I don't need any more, so I'm going to right click and say OK. So at this point, you can see that if you did not make all of your pegboard parts different colors, you can see now hopefully why it's important that you make it different colors. It makes it easier to see. Okay, now we're going to assemble. And so this part right here on the right side is already oriented correctly, and so this notch obviously is going to connect to the end of this pegboard. I'm going to use the Constrain tool to do this. So I'm going to click on Constrain, and I have 2 choices. I have Mate and I have Flush. Mate is as if you're taking some glue and gluing surfaces together, and Flush puts those surfaces in line with each other. So I just want to go ahead and glue surfaces. So I'm clicking on Mate. I'm going to rotate around using Shift and the scrolling wheel. I'm going to click on this surface. You'll notice I'm clicking on surfaces, not edges. And I'll click on this surface, and it will pop into place. So I'll hit apply and move it around so you can see. Okay. So this has been mated. It's been glued, but it's still moving around because you must have 3 points of 3 constraints to prevent anything from moving. So that's my first one. I'm going to move my place constraint back up here. So I'm going to look at this. This time I'm going to glue this bottom surface to the bottom surface on this side. So now it's popped it back into place again. Alright, now at this point I'll have one direction that this can move. It's going to slide back and forth. Okay, now I obviously don't want it to do that, so I'm going to go back to Constrain once again, and this time I'm going to use Flush, and Flush puts surfaces in line with each other. So if I get this kind of at an angle, you can see that I want this in line with this. And so there we go. That looks pretty good. Alright, same thing over here. Now you can see that this isn't oriented correctly, which is fine, it doesn't matter. Okay. That's one thing kids always get really upset about. They think, well, this doesn't face the right direction, there's no way I can constrain it. It doesn't matter. You just go through the same process as you did before. I want to glue, so click on Mate. I want to glue this surface to this surface. And it flips it around, so everything's fine. I'm going to go ahead and flush it this time. Flush this surface to this surface. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue, so I'm going to move this up a little bit so I can see it. And I'm going to go back to my Mate, and I'm going to glue this top ledge to here. Apply. So that is how you constrain and put together the pegboard. The next step is obviously we're going to have the little the pegs. So we got the round peg, so I'm going to open that up. I only need one. I'm going to add the square peg, and I'm going to add the the triangle peg. So all three of these. Okay. The first one, I'm going to do the green peg first. Go to Constrain. And this, you need to make sure that when you select this, since it is a rounded object, you can see that as I hover over it, I get this red line that goes all the way through it. That is taking the center, so you need that. If you just do a surface, it's just going to constrain the surface, but I want the actual line that goes all the way through. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see over here that I'm also looking for that center. So I'm going to click on that, and so it pops it right in place. So now I've got that green peg. The next one, since this is not round, that isn't going to work, but the mate will still work where I'm going to glue surfaces. So I'm going to glue this surface to the surface, apply, move it out of the way, and I'm going to constrain once again. So mate, I want to mate this surface to here, apply. So I'm only adding 2 constraints on this one because I want it to still be able to slide up and down to simulate it being actually in a pegboard. Final part is this triangle. Same thing as the square. Mate 2 sides. So move this out of the way so I can see it. And mate this side. If your triangle does not work, if it throws up an error, it's because your triangle peg, either the peg or the triangle in the board, is not an equilateral triangle. So if you find that your triangle peg is not working, it's because your triangle is not an equilateral triangle. And so that's how you go about assembling the pegboard.